If you're trying to memorize your speeches, you're doing it all wrong. And this is probably the reason why you might be forgetting your speech when it's time to say it, why you might be crumbling under pressure, and why I can't remember the hook to this video. That's the lesson here. All right, we're not meant to memorize, we're meant to come up with new ideas and think creatively on the spot. So this is the method which I'll share with you in this video. It's the exact same method I've used to help me speak in front of crowds the size of 2,000 people, receive some standing ovations, and win some public speaking competitions. It's quite simple and it works. So here's what most people do. They end up writing out their whole speech. And so they sit down, they give themselves perfect scenario, perfect circumstances, and the right situation where they can be free from pressure and think creatively and just write out the perfect script, right? They can think clearly, so they write the best words that they can possibly think of on paper. So we have the ideal words we want to say here. And so what we go and do is we go and we memorize all the ideal words, the entire speech, bar for bar, word for word. That doesn't work. Because what that does, it leads to two things. It leads to death, it leads to a brain. What I mean, it leads to the death of your creativity, all your natural charm and charisma, your personality, your authenticity. It's gone out the window. Because what you end up doing is you don't become a speaker, you become a reciter. And it leads to the death of any little natural personality or humor that can arise. And yes, you might have a prepared joke there. Yes, you might have a prepared little bit of vulnerability where you're vulnerable and you share that you also like comic books and Superman. But that's not real. That's not real vulnerability. That's not real humor. That's not real you. That's not real charm and charisma. That's largely prepared. And so what the crowd gains is not the words you say, but rather how you say it and rather how you say it to them. So it doesn't exactly matter that you're saying the perfect words. It doesn't exactly matter that you have the perfect prepared joke and it's worked 1,000 times in your head. It doesn't matter if you have, whatever technique you may have practiced or implemented there, if you can't actually say it to your audience. You're just saying it out there. You just put, like when you stand there with the speech and you say it and you memorize it bar for bar and you say, "Good morning, everyone. I'm Luca. Today I'll be telling you how to write better speeches. Sorry, but you're practicing your speeches wrong, blah, 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 blah." You forget the hook of the beginning, the intro of the video. So it's best just to go and speak. And so I'll give you what I do now. But that isn't good because it leads to the death of your personality, the death of any humor that can possibly arise, anything that people can possibly like about you. Oh, I can relate to Luca's weird quirkiness. I can relate to Luca's weird sense of humor. I can relate to this person's whatever is gone because you're preparing so much that it's just becoming robotic. It's almost like in football when you have someone on the wing. The wing is supposed to be this fast, technical Brazilian dribbler who expresses himself with football, who likes to dribble and he plays so almost flamboyantly, passionately. It's almost like a drama performance. His whole soul's in the football. But then now you're the manager and you're telling him, nope, just get the ball, run forward, sprint because you're fast, and then just pass the ball to the big striker in the middle. This is what you're doing. You're just passing the ball to the big striker in the middle and running because you're fast, because you have a brain that can memorize things. So there's the death of all your natural charisma, all your natural potential, all your natural way you can express yourself with the football and dribble. And then it becomes pressure on our brain, because firstly, our brain's not that big, guys. We're not that smart, okay? We're just little Neanderthal beings, okay? Like 100 years ago, we were still eating, I don't know, lobsters. And we were giving lobsters to prisoners and saying it was the rat of the ocean. And now we're eating it and saying, wow, I wish I was in Monaco. Whatever. So it puts pressure on us to memorize everything word for word. And so when we go and stand there, and when it's finally time to perform, when the stakes are high, when actual important real people are standing there waiting for us to say something, and all the pressure piles up, we have additional pressure on us to remember, what was that word between Mary and Susan? Nonetheless. Yeah. Is that one word or three words? Nonetheless. I don't remember. It's just a lot of pressure on me to remember everything. So that's why it doesn't work. So what is the solution? Okay. So here we have the exact same speech, all right? A bunch of words and whatnot, some scribbles to represent sentences. But here we're almost highlighting everything and studying everything because we don't know exactly what's important. Okay, we think all our words are important. All our words were well thought out and constructed to a T, and that's why we want everything to be said. But that's not the case. In reality, in a speech, there's only about 3, 4 important parts to a speech. 5 max. Definitely 2 though. So with me, I always begin all of my speeches with a story. So the first part will, let's say the first 3 sentences there, that's the story, okay? At the end of a story, that's the first important point because that's often your realization. So that point will obviously be very important. In that moment, I realized it wasn't about letting go of my big brother, but it was never getting the chance to say goodbye. And now that my big brother is no longer with us, he's very much alive, we just continue to live far apart, I realized that the end of a story is very, very important. So that was an example from one of my stories. So that's a first important part. And so I'll go and circle it more or less there, okay? That's where the first important point would be. And then we move on. And then we'd say, oh yeah, this point here is actually pretty important. Greatness comes with great responsibility. A quote by Winston Churchill, blah, 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 blah. Then we keep speaking. Then we have the conclusion. And we say, oh yeah, and in that moment I realized that it's not greatness that comes with great responsibility, but rather great responsibility that comes with greatness. So that's where our 3 important points would be, for example, right? There's only 3 real important points. And those 3 sentences, those 3 realizations, those ideas or concepts, that is what matters. That is what we can go and sit down and memorize. That is what we can construct to a T. That is what really has to be on point, okay? Think of it like you're the dribbler on the wing, you're the winger who can dribble. You only have like 3 skills that you can do, okay? But they have to be the best in the world. You can cut inside, you can have an insanely good left foot finesse shot, and you can have very good step overs, all right? You only really need 3 skills for you to be a good dribbler, okay? So we only have about 3, 4, 5 important points in a speech for it to be good. I just want to double check that everything is in frame here. Oh, amazing. So then what we go and do is we go and we take those 3 points and think of it like this. We have the 3 points. So here would be what? Story, realization, or transformation at the end of a story. And then it would be the quote from Winston Churchill, for example. And then it would be the 1000x1. Then it would be the ending, the conclusion, okay? And what we want to do, these are our 3 important points. We essentially want to remember 3 lines and then we can bridge them and connect them. Instead of going and memorizing everything, we have 3 ideas and then we connect them. And what are we connecting them with? That would be our simple, natural speaking ability. What I mean by that is, for example, in the story, I already know what the story is because I've lived it, I've experienced it, I've thought about it, I've journaled about it. Well, I know the story, okay? I don't have to go and construct it perfect, or at least I can write out the story and construct it very well, but I don't have to go and memorize it word for word because bottom line, I know the story. What all I need to know is a few points from it to immediately know what I have to say. For example, if someone comes and says the words to me, Valentine's Day, teddy bear, broken heart, I immediately know what story I have to tell. There was a story where it was on Valentine's Day. I went to go ask this cute girl I like to be my Valentine, but before I could even, give her the teddy bear and I had this whole plan planned out, but before I could go and execute it, she rejected me because it was physical education. We took our clothes off to get dressed into our sports clothes, and she turns to me, looks at me, and says, "Luca, you're kind of fat." And that stung, and that hurt, and it sucked, and blah, blah, blah. But I immediately know what story I'm telling based on 3 words. So that's all we need. If the realization is just, in that moment, I realize it wasn't about letting go, it was about never getting the chance to say goodbye, I immediately know what has to build up to that. So I can even then just put a few words. Water polo, because I mentioned a water polo match to highlight how cool my big brother is. Leaving Australia, going overseas, going abroad, airport, plus family. I immediately know the entire sequence of the story then. I know where to put the jokes. We're at the airport, the whole family's leaning against the glass to see if they'll notice the liter of vodka we snuck into a suitcase. Lol, ha ha ha. I know the realization at the end of my story. And then again, speaking ability is what connects those two. Speaking ability is what builds this whole point up. Because we just want natural conversation, natural words, natural atmosphere when we speak. We don't want it to be some drama, some performance, something no one can connect to. Does that make sense? So that's what we're achieving through these little bridges here. And then when it's time to say a really important point, we completely destroy it. We poof, poetry in motion, okay? Because the whole time it's going to be conversational talking, and then out of nowhere we just say something incredibly profound, incredibly well constructed, and incredibly thought out. People are going to think, hey, that just came out of nowhere. This guy's just naturally operating on the same level as Shakespeare. Not necessarily. This guy just knows exactly how to structure his speech. And then we use natural speaking ability again to lead us to the quote. So then we know, oh yeah, there's a quote. So I realized it's not greatness. I realized it's not about letting go. It was about blah, 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 blah. And then I have to lead to the quote, oh, because growing up, I always felt like I needed someone to be there for me and blah, 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 blah. And we can always have a point or two to guide us. So growing up, difficult, and then that'll just, we can riff off of those points, but we can also, that'll just remind us and guide us along the path. It's like a little candle along the path that just lights it up just enough so we can see where we're walking. But we go and walk there. We don't need the candle the whole way, all right? It's lighting up the path a bit here and a bit there and a bit there, but we can see there's kind of a path going forward. Does that make sense? So we're getting to that point, and it's a quote, and then again, we can have another bullet point or two. People looked up to him, blah, 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 reminding me of what to talk about, and then I get to the ending, and that's the part where I know really, really well. In that moment, I realized it wasn't greatness that brings great responsibility, but it's great responsibility that brings greatness, etc. And so if you pay attention here in detail, you can see there's like a times 10, a times 100, a times 1,000. The example I try and create is that these little points, if you've ever played a video game, there's a boss fight. When I'm thinking of Ratchet and Clank, when you're shooting at the boss, it's this big monster with these big gangly eyes, and then you'll get like a critical point. If you shoot the point on highlighted on the monster, all the bullets, all the like little lasers you shoot at it are going to do extra damage. Okay, so we're essentially just hitting critical points. Those 3 parts of the story, those are the highest damage. If we can just hit those successfully, we can give the most value to our audience. We can give them the best realization. We can give them the best lesson. We can give them the best piece of advice. We can give them the most info to relate to. We can give them a good person, a good character to listen to let them, to lead them essentially, right? Think of it like that. If we can just almost double down and just make sure those 3 important components of our speech bang, we can win. So those are our critical points. And we just have to concentrate and focus as much of our attention to smashing those. And everything else we can just let fall into place through our natural speaking ability. And what this does, there's 4 things that which this brings us, 4 fruits of our labor. Firstly, that was supposed to be a mirror with a model face with a sharp jawline and hollow cheeks in it. It helps us look better. So I mentioned the point where it's conversational, colloquial speaking. Everyone's like, oh, this guy's pretty chill. This guy's quite a normal guy to listen to. His speaking style is very digestible. I can just sit here and listen and actually understand him for once. And then out of nowhere, you have an insanely good point, which is almost profound and almost philosophical and amazing. How did you even think of that deep realization? So it helps us just look a lot better in that regard. And then it's us, them, easy connection. So by optimizing for our natural speaking ability, we can connect to people a lot easier. Why? Because they can actually understand us for once. We can use natural words, a natural storytelling structure. We can use natural examples, natural analogies, natural things that we do in conversation to connect to those people. Thirdly, right person. We attract the right people. I'm not for everyone. You're not for everyone. You might not be for me, but hopefully, if you've made it this far to the video, there's some kind of connection between the two of us. You might be the right person. I might be the right person for you. Does that make sense? So we're not getting married, bro. Chillax. But we attract the right people. Okay, not everyone is gonna like our natural speaking ability. Not everyone is gonna like our story, which we talk about. Not everyone is gonna like the analogies we use and our quirks and charms and jokes and our bullet points and the bridges, whatever we fill the bridges with, that is unique and subjective and authentic to us. So people might not like our bridges, and that's okay. But there will be people which really like our bridges. And if we can just speak to the right people or attract the right people, we gain a lot more from that than just memorizing this and trying to speak for everyone and be liked by everyone. So it doesn't work like that. And then that is meant to be kilopascal low pressure. So it's a lot less pressure. Because if we have to go and memorize however many words, like 10 minutes worth of speaking, however many words that is, compared to about 5 sentences or 5 ideas or concepts to guide us, that's a lot less pressure. There's only 5 main things or critical points we have to hit and a few bullet points to guide us, and that's it. That's a lot less mental pressure because we don't have to go and memorize everything. And we can literally just be ourselves. There's a lot less pressure to go and live up to some kind of, or to align to some kind of speaking style or archetype. It's just, remember that point, fill it up with whoever you are. Does that make sense? So that's the style. That's how I like to speak. That's how I structure my points. And it's worked quite well for me. I kind of messed up the intro of this video, but I don't really care. And I hope you got some value from this. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me in the comments. I will reply. If you want personalized advice, check the link in the description because it's free and I actually want to give you some help here. And I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.